Hey guys, Scott here again. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do a little segment about monastic brewing as well as Trappist beers. If you're looking for the beer dissection version of this video, I may put on the tail end of this video about Belgian doubles, triples, Trappist ales, Orval, things like that. So if you're looking for that, if you hang in there, I'll get it to, probably piggyback it at the end of this video. But I just wanted to just devote a little time about monastic brewing. So if you're watching this solely by, without a beer dissection at the end or a beer analysis at the end, hopefully get something out of this too. So monastic brewing, has been around for hundreds of years. Even going back around the 8th and 9th centuries. And St. Benedict had put a lot of those early monastic breweries, put a lot of the rules on how they needed to be self-sufficient. And that led to brewing their own beer to sustain themselves during Lent, making cheeses, making a lot of other food products, even things like the Oath of Silence that, a lot of the early monks had to do. So actually monastic brewing has been around. Modern day Trappist brewing, which I'm going to get to in a minute, is something that's reasonably new, even as early as, some of the styles of beer, at least in the early 1900s, even though some of the modern day Trappist breweries have been around since around 1820s, 1830s. So hundreds of years ago, 8th, 9th century, you had all these monasteries, a lot of them, were in the Belgium area, modern day Belgium area, as well as the Netherlands. And again, I'll get to more specifics of where they are currently these days. So they were brewing for sustenance as well as a lot of other products. Around the 11th century, a branch off of some of the monasteries and monks was the Cistercian order that became kind of the Trappist monasteries of today. But they went through some hard times too. We had the French Revolution, I believe, in the late 1700s. You had, 2 world wars. During all those times when, especially going back to the French Revolution, with France being right there between, Belgium sitting there between France and Germany, they ransacked, burnt down these monasteries. They rebuilt them, started brewing again. Then you had World War I. The Germans were known to steal the mash tuns of the monasteries and burn them to the ground. So they had to rebuild and restart a few different times through their history. That's why, if you go to your beer store now, when I do my videos about Trappist beers, a lot of times people think oh my God, these beers have been around. They see Belgian triples, singles, quads and stuff. Oh, hundreds and hundreds of years. No, those beers back in, we'll just say the 11th century, 5th century, even going back further, they were been brewing beer, but the styles of beer have been a lot different than they are currently to this day. So, so they would brew it still for sustenance. They would make a lot of other products. And even to this day, I haven't been to Belgium myself, obviously I've been to Europe, but, they make other products to sustain the monks and things like that. So again, the French Revolution, the 1790s, kind of ransacked a lot of these monasteries and Trappist breweries, again, from the Cistercian order. Then, World War I, the Germans were known to steal the mash tuns to be repurposed for military use. So the monasteries, a lot of the monks had to move to certain different regions in Belgium or different areas of Europe, and they would resurface again. Then you had the Second World War that kind of came down. Something to mention about the mash tuns too is even in the early 1900s, they would, English beer would be taxed on original gravity. Belgian brewers would be taxed on the size of their mash tun because of the amount of beer they could brew. So a lot of them would but they wouldn't be taxed on the second mash tun, which they would use wheat. So they would use a lot of wheat in their beers too. Kind of fast forwarding, after around 1919, there was the Van der Velde Acts, which kind of put a restriction on Genever, if I'm pronouncing that properly, which was kind of a precursor to gin or kind of similar to gin. And that after that was implemented a lot. There was a lot, kind of not an uprising in Belgium, but they wanted to brew stronger beers. That's why a lot of times now with a lot of the styles, Belgian double, triple, quad, a lot of the Belgian beers alcohol percentages is very high because they were trying to brew higher strength beers because they were kind of, if you want to say, upset about banning gin and a lot of spirits back then in the early 1990s. So, going back to around the 11th century, and you had your Trappist monasteries, and they would rebuild after World War I, World War II. Currently, there's about 170 Trappist monasteries in the world, and most of them are in Belgium. There's some, I think there's one in Italy, La Trappe in the Netherlands, and about 13 of them currently, and I think it's 12 now because I think Aachen no longer has a monk kind of overseeing things. So there's about 12, but you have Trappist breweries like Chimay, Westmalle, Westvleterlen, Orval, which brews their own beer. There used to be Aachen. The last surviving monk died, which kind of leads me to, so there's roughly 13. There was just one in Massachusetts that closed down because called Spencer. I think they did it for more economical reasons. So there's still roughly 13 Trappist breweries in the world. So there's about 170 monasteries, and there's 13 Trappist breweries. Now, why don't they all are breweries? Well, there's certain rules now that they have to abide by to be a Trappist brewery. One is the brewery has to be on the grounds of the Trappist monastery. The other thing is the monks at the Trappist brewery must either be brewing the beer or overseeing the beer. And the third big thing is that all the proceeds, even though the Trappist breweries are not really in big competition with each other, that's kind of weird because, we're used to breweries and businesses trying to compete with each other. All the proceeds need to either support the monastery or the surrounding town in that it supports. So all the money needs to go to, say, if you want to say goodwill. So there are specific rules. And on the beers, there'll be a little, if you're at your Belgian beer store, or not necessarily Belgian beer store, your local beer store, you'll see a little emblem. I think there was a lawsuit either with Orval or could be Westmalle even too, that sued and made it so that you would have that delineation. Now, I should mention that even though there's roughly, give or take, 13 Trappist breweries, there are other Abbey breweries, we'll call them, that are secular brewers, which non-religious, that will make the styles of Trappist breweries, but they can't call themselves Trappist. St. Bernardus is an example of one of them. Some of those, they make the ABT 12 if you're in your beer store. So there's other ones that will make the styles, but they can't call themselves Trappist breweries. But they'll have the theme of being like a monastery or religious. They'll have like a monk on front. And I did a video on Christmas sales. I got the monk wearing a Santa hat and stuff like that. So they'll brew the similar styles to that. So again, Chimay, Westmalle, Westvleterlen, Rochefort, La Trappe, Aachen. Some are Aachen. I think one of the last monks died, so I think they lost their Trappist delineation with that. So again, they've gone through a lot of, starting with monastic brewing hundreds of years ago. Now, some of the modern day beers, like from Westmalle, a lot of them were only started around the 1920s, 1930s. I think the double came out first, D-U-B-B-E-L, and it's pronounced that way, double. Some people want to call it Dubel or triple. It's pronounced triple, it's not tripel. Those beers actually were an early 20th century, 1920 something, I think, came out. So, you go to your store, you watch some of my videos, and I talk about different styles, the Belgian quad and Belgian single and double, that a lot of them, those are newer styles of beer that had come out. They weren't, not to say they didn't match a little bit, but they weren't recipes from 600 years ago. So again, you can see how these monasteries and then the Trappist Cistercian order branched off, went through a lot of hard times with the French Revolution, World War I, World War II, issues with their mash tuns being stolen. The monks actually buried their mash tuns to try to hide them from the Germans in the between World War I and World War II. Now, general things, and again, at the end of this video, if I piggyback, I go into more history. I'm going to be going into more history on each style and talk about each specific style, like single or extra or double. But generally, there's a single, a double, a triple, and a quad. Now, there's nothing double or triple about any of it. There are increasing alcoholic strength, so there is more grain being used. But with these styles that you see in your store, there's nothing kind of double or triple about it. But they are higher alcoholic strength. There are more grains being used. So the single, the interesting thing is the single, which is sometimes I classified as the extra. There are some beers that are only brewed for the monks, so they're not actually brought out for the mass market, are more lighter style beers. They're kind of pale straw to gold to maybe a light amber. The double and the quad, or sometimes called Belgian Dark Strong, are darker beers. They're like brown, not necessarily black like stout, but they're darker beers. The single is roughly 4 to 6% alcohol. The double is about 6 to 7.5% alcohol. And the triple is about 7.5 to 9.5% alcohol. And the quad is between 8 and 12%. So, you can see that there is an increase. So those are the main styles. To get to the alcoholic strength, a lot of them, they'll use Pilsner malt. This is just general things. I will dive into the beer dissection and the specific history of the styles later. But they will, use Belgian candy sugar, light or dark, which gives it a lot of their color. And the thing with candy sugar is the yeast will ferment out all the sugar and just produce alcohol, but make a lighter bodied style of beer. That's why if you've ever had any Belgian styles of beers, a lot of them, you don't realize they drink it. You're like, man, they taste like, seltzer water, or at least the body of like seltzer water, but they're like 11% alcohol, 10% alcohol. You got to be very careful with them. So they use light candy sugar. They use dark candy sugar, depending on if they're doing a single, a double, a triple, or a quad. That's usually something that's pretty consistent. A lot of the Trappist beers will use a specific yeast that will give phenols like peppery or clove-like phenols, and esters like orange, like in the triple will have like an orange kind of taste to it. I don't make it sound like you're drinking orange juice, but like kind of if you really analyze it, they'll have kind of an esters from like an orange or light citrus type of thing. And so those are some similarities that you'll see in the beers. And again, I'll dive into them deeper at the end of this video. If I piggyback a style of beer at the end of this video, that's what we'll do. So as you get an idea, I have a passion for, Belgian beers as well as, monastic and Trappist beers. And there is a lot of interesting history. And even though I'm giving you a roughly 15-20 minute video about it, you really could dive into it a lot, head first into it and get into a lot more specifics about it. So again, kind of a very arduous journey from monastic brewing from hundreds of years ago to the modern day Cistercian order of Trappist breweries, with being about 170 monasteries. Not all monasteries have breweries on site there. And again, you will see other Belgian styles or Abbey style beers that are not considered Trappist beers. And again, it's more of a appellation, I guess, if you want to call it that, like some of your wines in Italy and Champagne region in France, to be called a Trappist brewery. So guys, hopefully that's good enough information. If you are staying for the beer dissection at the end of this, I will tag it at the very end. Hang in there. I may look a little different when you do that. If not, it'll be at the tail end of this, or I will, if you just wanted to get some basic information about monastic and Trappist beers in general, without going through that, I will see you on the next video. Okay, guys, Have a great day, and until the next video, I will see you there. But definitely go out there and try some of those Trappist beers, okay? Or even some Abbey beers, okay? Take care.